Hey, now that we have our pipelines and objects set up, we've created the code to issue our commands. We are only left with a handful of steps. We need to create something known as semaphores and fences. These objects are used to synchronize our command's execution. With the swap chain responsible for displaying the rendered frames, you see we need to make sure that a frame is available for rendering and it is not held by the swap chain or being rendered to before we take it for a new render pass through the pipeline. We also need to make sure that the frame is done rendering before we queue it for being displayed on the surface. And finally, we need to make sure that the swap chain is able to accept new frames. The semaphores are asynchronous and they will help the GPU synchronize its work. The fence will not only block the GPU, but also make the CPU wait until the GPU gives a green light to continue. In this lesson, we're only going to initialize these objects. Since you can also think of semaphores and fences as signals that something has happened, I'll create a new method called Create Signals. This method will be called with the initialization of Vulkan. So now that we are done here, let's go to the region tool at our code. And now I create a body for this new method and make it a part of the graphics object. We want to create two semaphores and one fence. So I create a semaphore info object and set its S-type. I also create a fence info object and set its S-type as well. Now I will create this conditional where I call vk create semaphore. It takes a logical device, the empty semaphore info struct, no allocator, and finally the others to the image available signal. If that was not a success, we can exit here and now. Now I'll duplicate this code for the second semaphore and also for the fence by changing up the function to vk create fence and set the field to the fence properly. Now all three of these are created, so we need to make the corresponding destroy calls in the destructor. So I check if each of them is a no handle and call the vk destroy semaphore. I'll save time by duplicating the code and only correcting the relevant values. Now I build a project to see if everything up until now runs correctly. I get a build error though. Let's see what it is. Here in the last lesson I've forgotten to return the scissor object in the getScissor method. Let's build and run this again. And now it seems to run fine. Still a white screen though. In the next lesson we're moving forward from this blank page. We're going to render our triangle.